Welcome to Now and Next, a podcast brought to you by the Canada Media Fund. I'm Leora Kornfeld. On this episode, the greening of TV and film production with Zena Harris of the environmental consultancy Green Spark Group. The creative industries, it turns out, have significant environmental impacts. We tended to think that once physical products like videos and CDs and DVDs fell by the way, that we were more or less good. Gone were the concerns about plastic and aluminum and cardboard packaging, all that stuff. It turns out, no, not so fast. A recent study showed that digital technologies and streaming produce even more carbon emissions than the aerospace industry. And then there's TV and film production. Some have likened the process to a traveling circus because of the army of trailers and generators and catering and costume, hair and makeup people. And there's also the raw materials required for set construction and decoration. Oh, and don't forget, vehicles idling for hours on end. Zena Harris thinks there's a better way to approach things for the good of the planet and for the good of the budget.
From a cost perspective, there are a lot of ways productions can save money. And we're seeing across the board there is a net cost savings when implementing sustainable production practices.
In just a second, my conversation with environmental consultant to the motion picture and entertainment industry, Zena Harris. Zena, how and when did this eco-sensibility on set start?
One of the key milestones, I think, was in 2006. There was a report that came out from UCLA talking about the impacts of the motion picture industry in comparison to other industries. And that's when many of the larger studios started hiring sustainability directors and really focusing their efforts on impact reduction. And so that's when I believe it really started, and it's just been growing since then. I mean, other programs like Real Green in BC also started in '06. So, there might have been some efforts happening in various places, but nothing was really coordinated until around '06, I would say.
And was it more of a bottom-up initiative, something that was coming from the people who worked on the crews, or was it a top-down thing coming from the studios and the producers?
It's both, actually. I mean, back then, it may have been more of a top-down or, more internal through the larger studios, but I don't want to underestimate the power of the crew and what they've been able to do. I mean, some folks are really innovative, and we're seeing now in the work that we do that crew members, when we are engaging, crew, if we're on production, run a show, and we're engaging crew in a consistent way, they've got a lot of ideas. They want to implement sustainable production practices. They want to be able to, bring their ideas forward and really take agency over this. And so we're seeing that groundswell from the crew. And then we're also seeing larger studios. They've got their sustainability mandates and they want to integrate sustainable production. So we're seeing it from that way too. So, it's a little bit of both. I would say that crew are, they're out there, they're rocking it. They want to do this. And, the studios don't want to say no to lowering their impact. And so they welcome any ideas and feedback and any initiative that productions do take.
And what's your background? How did you get involved in all this?
It started when I was at a job at a large corporation. I was working in human resources, and I didn't even know corporate sustainability was a thing. And so I was trying to figure out why, I was training people on practices that I knew weren't quite right or processes that were a little bit broken, that sort of thing. And so I was really, struggling with that. And so I started looking around, what does this mean? How can I improve, these processes and efficiency and all of this? And I found a graduate program at Harvard, and I started in sustainability and environmental management and focused on, corporate sustainability. And within that, entertainment always lagged behind in rating and ranking reports that would come out at the time. And I thought, well, my gosh, if entertainment is lagging behind, why is that? If it's such an influential, sector, and that started this whole ball rolling. I moved to Vancouver just after I graduated, And I didn't realize at the time, but Vancouver's, and it still is, but, I didn't know I was moving to, the third largest film hub in North America. So, I started looking around and thinking, oh my gosh, there's a lot of filming going on here. What's going on with sustainability? And started reaching out to many organizations and finding out, who the vendors were, what was going on, was there a consistent way of doing this? And, decided that there was a place in the market for a company to do this. And that's when I started GreenSpark Group and started working specifically on production and in sustainability and, the industry at large. So
it's interesting to think about when with the shift to digital, whether it's music or any kind of product, we think if we're not consuming something that comes in a box or that has plastic involved or vinyl, cardboard, whatever it is, we tend to think, then it doesn't have an environmental impact. But I was really surprised to learn, for example, that the environmental impact of streaming music in terms of greenhouse gas emissions from storage, servers, electricity, all of those things is actually greater than what we had from when we had the physical products. That's really something to think about. And when you started working in this area, what were some of those startling statistics that jumped out at you?
It's kind of one of those things that you don't quite know what the impact is until you start measuring it. And, I got in and started working on production and started measuring the carbon footprint of each production that I worked on, and then as my team grew, as we worked on. And, what we're seeing, and this is very clear no matter where you're shooting, that, fuel consumption is, one of the largest contributors to the greenhouse gas emission profile. So I would say fuel, and also, another one is food, simply reducing red meat. I didn't really think much about that early on as one of the things to focus on with production. But as we're learning, and food is getting served every day, and lots of it, that cutting out red meat is significant in terms of the greenhouse gas emission reduction that can actually take place. So that's another one that it doesn't cost any money to do, and it actually saves a lot in emissions and can also save money right off the bat because you're not paying for expensive food like meat. So that's another one that I think is really important for people to understand when they're planning out their meals.
I can't be the only one who wonders this, but where do all those uneaten donuts go? I always think about donuts when I think about film sets. Where do they go?
Well, there are a couple of options there. If the production has compost, they might go into the compost bin. But if the production decides to donate food, any food on the catering line could go to a shelter, nonprofit. That I think is a really key thing to note, is that in every province in Canada it is legal to donate food, and in every state in the U.S. it's legal to donate food. So there is no reason why good food cannot be donated. It takes just a little bit of effort to do. Shelters are really excited to have the food, and it can be a win-win all the way around. The production will then also save money, because if you think about it, if you're taking trays of food that is good food to a homeless shelter, you're not putting it in, say, a compost or worst case landfill bin, which means you're not then paying for that extra volume to be disposed of later. And tipping fees for waste can get expensive. So that's a cost savings on the back end that the production is not having to pay.
And why was it illegal before to donate the unused food?
It really wasn't illegal. I mean, it's been legal in Canada for years. So I think it was a myth, really. Maybe people got turned away because, particular shelter, didn't want, a certain type of food, or whatever the case is. There's always a story around this. But it is absolutely legal to donate food, and the donor is protected from liability to donate. Every single one of the productions that I've worked on, and I'm sure that, I want to say that take place really everywhere, need to have licensed caterers and food service providers delivering the food. So there should be no reason why that food wouldn't be prepared in a safe manner and then therefore could be donated safely.
I believe this is one of your pet peeves on set, the bottled water.
Yes, absolutely. It is definitely a pet peeve. It is something that comes up all the time. Everybody notices bottled water and they all want to get rid of it. You're talking about crew who voice their opinion. This is one of the first things that comes up when we're talking to crew on set is bottled water. Nobody really likes it, but it's always there. And so there's really no reason for that. I mean, the water line item on production you can see significant savings if the production decides to go with bulk water in, larger jugs like the 18.9 liter jugs, or in the States, 5-gallon jugs. And they're basically the large refillable water jugs that crew members can fill up their reusable water bottles and they are good to go. And that is a massive cost saving. So I'll just give you an example. What we're seeing on the shows that we work on, just water bottles alone, and substituting with these larger jugs of water can save, from what we're seeing on our shows, an average of $63,000 from the shows that we've worked on.
$63,000, is that on a feature film that you're talking?
I'm talking on average from the shows that we've worked on at Green Spark Group. So we've worked on mostly, features and large TV series, so larger productions. But that water savings is significant just by choosing to go with the larger jug of water and a reusable water bottle. So I think when productions start really diving into these numbers and hearing that, and we're seeing this data consistently, I think that's going to really shift behavior, because there is no reason why a production couldn't use reusable water bottles, or as an alternative, water in aluminum cans that have a screw top, because those can be reused over and over and over again as well. If you happen to need, a quick, single-use kind of, or, bottle, that would be the next best. But there's no reason why production couldn't use reusable water bottles and large jugs.
Is there a budget level at which it makes sense to start greening a production?
No, I would say any production, no matter the size, can implement sustainable production practices. I mean, we are seeing, obviously large productions are doing this. Any production can do it. Even a small indie film, commercial shoots are very, small and very fast. Larger productions, obviously you see larger cost savings because it's just a larger production and you see these economies of scale there. But any production can implement this. We worked with a production in Vancouver, and it was a short film, and they shot in 4 days, and they went so far as the producer was called a sustainable producer, period. That was the ethos of the production, and it didn't cost them a lot of money to go that route. And it's actually easier for smaller productions because they are more nimble and can adapt and implement some of these practices a lot easier than, say, larger productions where you're having to integrate through, 100 people or 200 people. So it's easier for smaller ones, but anybody can do it.
Are there a couple of either studios, producers, or shows that you can point to as examples of people who are really leading the way in this regard?
Sure. A producer close by in Vancouver, her name is Clara George, and she is leading the charge and, implementing sustainable production practices across the board in every department on her show. And she loves data, so she, of course, is tracking everything. And they're saving a lot of money, and they're saving a lot of resources and greenhouse gas emissions. And so she is on The Magicians. She's a producer on The Magicians. And she, at the very beginning, and this is what we recommend anybody do, at the very beginning, talk to your crew about this and talk to every department about this. So sit down with every department head and talk about what is important to them, what they can do throughout this particular production. Every production is different. So, what's going to make sense here, and really start working toward that over the course of production. And I think what's really important too is giving examples of the wins during production, what's going on. So Clara does this on her production. And then we've got other great examples. So in the States, the Producers Guild of America has a green committee called the PGA Green, and the producers that are part of that, so, for example, Mary Jo Winkler in New York, she implements sustainable production practices on every single production and is, just like Clara. She, makes sure that every department knows that this is important and, that this is part of the ethos of the production. So it's out there. It's happening. People are taking the lead. Producers are really starting to step up and saying, that it's setting the expectation up front that this is what they want, and crew follow suit. This is how it works, and they actually have fun, I think, in the process. And some are actually kind of relieved that their production is sustainably focused. So it can really be a motivating factor, I think.
Thank you very much, Zena Harris.
Thank you.
And that's it for another episode of Now and Next, brought to you by the Canada Media Fund. You can find us in the usual places you find your podcasts, and you know what they always say, don't forget to subscribe. That way you won't miss any new episodes. And rating or reviewing is also a big help, so if you have a few seconds for that would be great. And for now, thanks for listening, and I hope you'll come back next time for more Now and Next. I'm Leora Kornfeld.